Well, welcome. Happy New Year 2025. Tony Salas here. Hope you're doing well. Been interesting last few, I guess, month and a half on what's going on in YouTube here. I've been trying to keep my mouth shut. But anyways, thought I'd touch base on a few things that been going on here. So let me get my little presentation going here. So therefore, um, first of all, I guess we should get started on what's going on lately. First of all, a lot of things going on with YouTube and online stuff, in other words, what we've been seeing in terms of what's been going on with injection pumps and common around diesel. So, obviously, those of you that know me, my experience goes beyond 30 years of working in this business in different levels. I'm not perfect. I made my mistakes, but I've also had my successes as well. So therefore, when I like to teach something, I like to think I know what I'm talking about. So therefore, it's, some people that know me for years, like I said, I've done numerous training and work for different companies through the years. So with that said, we got a lot of things going on with YouTube. You got everybody that just because they've done some repairs, they worked a few years, they seem to know everything about what's going on. Well, no, right? And the problem is, first of all, the purpose of Diesel Talk with Tony Salas is actually based to help that do-it-yourself where that guy just needs help. Lord knows I just fixed my Keurig coffee maker. I need to know what to do and how to stick a needle, clean that coffee maker. Lord knows I need to have my coffee. So with that said, right, what is it that we're not learning here and understand is that, you talk about the CP4 pump. Yes, I'm going to hit on that sore subject. Oh, God, it's a very sore subject. But in this case, what I'm trying to say is that, what is it that we're seeing going on with the CP4 pump? Everybody talks about how bad of a pump it is and all it blows up, and they'll show you blown up pumps. But in this case, what do we do, you know, to prevent catastrophic failure? Does it happen? Yes, I don't deny that. It's obvious. It's out there. You see numerous pictures and all that. But what can be done? Now, if we go back to RAM or the Cummins 5.7, excuse me, 5.9, the Cummins 5.9, we go back to the VP44 days, the VP44 injection pump. We saw failures with that. So what took it out? It's the same thing. Low lift pump pressure, volume, and air, right? So in this case, is it something new? No, we've seen it in the past. I remember visiting so many, pump shops just rebuilding VP44 pumps on these, what was it, 99, 2000 model year 5.9, 24 valve motors. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that, instead of telling you, oh, you need to invest in this pump or you got to put this kit in there. Yeah, you can do that. It's your money. Fine, do whatever you want. But I'm the kind of person that if I have a Power Stroke 6.7 or a Duramax LML, and I want to know what's taking out these pumps because I want to know what I can do to prevent that failure from happening instead of, yeah, do the preventive stuff, I guess. But what I'm trying to say is that what takes out the pump? Do we understand? So I would like to see videos where somebody talks about, hey, what can you do to prevent pump failure, right? Because when we talk about common rail injection, whether being Bosch CP4 or others, the bottom line is the number one enemy is contamination. So when you see these pump failures, right, you ask yourself, what took out the pump? What is it that took out the pump, right? So in this case, we have to know that. And I'll get more into that later. But then we got issues with deletes. As visiting shops, when I was visiting shops, I was trying to say is that it's amazing how many delete trucks that I've seen. And the problem is, again, I'm not the EPA, I don't care. But the bottom line is there is crap delete programs out there. There is so many crap delete programs. In other words, I'm trying to diagnose a problem. There's no codes because whoever programmed it just turned off all the codes. So no codes will ever set. Well, you want codes. Some of our codes are good to have because I need to know where the issue might be to help me in my diagnostic process and reduce that diagnostic time, right? So therefore, that is a problem. So again, we got to know what we're dealing with. So are there good delete programs and are there bad delete programs? Yes. And the problem is when you guys want more horsepower and torque, you're pushing the engines a little bit. You're creating more back pressure from the variable vanes, and the list goes on and on and on. So therefore, we see a lot of issues, and to say that we're seeing longer life out of these engines is to be, talked about later. But in this case, then we talk about diesel fuel. I see these talking about the additives and the different types of additives and what quality what the additives have. The problem is the base fuel. So when you go, to a nearest fuel station, what is the consistency of diesel fuel? Okay, what is the consistency of diesel fuel? So in this case, if you saw the video I just did after SEMA, I did that back in November. You're going to see where I just show a quick video showing the different fuels that were sampled. I've done those. Alliant Power did it at that time. And in this case, is fuel always a consistent? In other words, when I go to that diesel fuel pump, am I going to have that same type and the same quality diesel fuel? We talk about 15 parts per million of sulfur content in diesel fuel. That's the maximum, but is it always the same? And the problem is, acetane is another problem. So therefore, that creates another problem. Because I got to tell you, if I fill up here at home and I drive to California, I will get on my 6.0. I'm lucky if I get 19. Yeah, I hit 19. That's pretty good. 19 miles a gallon. I will fill up in California and I will come back, and I'm lucky if I get 15 to 16. So what's that tell you about the consistency of those three major things that I like to break it down to? Because I'm one of those guys that breaks it down to the least common denominator. Lubricity, cetane, right? And also you need a cleaner, right? There are more things, obviously, but in this case, those are one of the main things I look for in an additive. Because again, the lubricity, we don't know. So when you want to talk about fuel additives, what you need to talk about also is what is the quality of fuel. So what we have done in the past at Alliant Power, like you see in that short video, go ahead and look it up in my short videos on my channel, and you're going to see that we have seen always no consistency in diesel fuel. So in this case, just by color alone tells you a lot. But then when we do specific gravity tests, because we're not labs, we can do just basic tests here in the shops and take just a specific gravity reading, you immediately know that it's not all the same. So if you're using an additive package, you're either supplementing, improving it, or in some cases you might be overloading it. It all depends. But again, you can talk about additives, but again, what's the quality of fuel you're buying at the pump? Then comes the need for competent technicians. As I wrapped up 2024 and I visited many shops, I trained many shops this past year, it is scary what some shops have for technicians. And in this case, the competency is the factor. Just because you're a monkey wrencher does not make you a technician. You can find guys that can change water pumps and change components, but the thing is, do they understand how they works? One of the classic lines I've been using in my classes for years that's kind of boring now is, isn't it fun to work on something when you know how it works, right? You know how it works. That's the point. So the scary part is competent technicians don't have a diagnostic process. They don't understand what's going on. For example, when you got a truck and you should see some of the phone calls I get from, shops that I do business with. It's like some of the issues they get, I've never seen this kind of issue. But the thing is, when you're dealing with an electronic gizmo of what is today's Power Stroke, Duramax, Cummins, and other applications, a computer needs good battery power. So in your diagnostic process, we talk about checking your battery power. But when I see that sulfur crap on the battery terminals, you don't clean the battery terminals, you could have a high resistance fault there. And then you got a voltage drop issue there. And that's going to create. So when somebody has emailed me or called me and say, hey, I got this thing, we've done this, we've done that, we replaced injector, what have we not done? We still got this issue. Then, before we can condemn the computer, we got to check everything else. And one of those key things is, have you measured battery power and ground? Like the one that sticks out was, this guy emailed me and this truck was literally doing weird things, And in this case, I said, you know what, before we even get started, I know you're a technician. You've done everything you could. You replaced some parts, blah, blah, blah. Do me a favor, check powers and grounds going to the computer. And I showed him how to do a pinout check. The guy said, and this is his response. His was, well, as a instructor and a, well-known guy, he goes, I thought you would give me a better answer. I said, no. Every time I have gone to shops and I've diagnosed at shops, I can't tell you how many times the issue was battery power, whether it being to the computer or from the battery itself. But we got to eliminate that as part of your diagnosis because people want that quick fix. Oh, this is what it is. No, when you got those nightmare trucks where maybe it's had, a cab off repair and they didn't put a ground back right or positive wire or something or wire got pinched, whatever, we have to start off from basics. And those basics means that battery, power, and ground, among other things in your diagnostic process. But, I can't tell you how many trucks that I have fixed this past year just by battery voltage or battery itself issues. And then checking the quality of fuel. We see DEF fluid in diesel fuel. People make that mistake. That can also be an issue too. And along with many other things, but I'm just giving you the options. So therefore, if you're a technician, you're a working technician, will you do me a favor, get training? If you don't do it through me, fine, get it through somebody. I don't care, but know what you're doing. Have some pride in what you're doing. So anyways, I'm trying to keep this video short, so I don't want to mumble on. But, when you look at a common rail system, here's a 6.7 power stroke common rail system. And the thing is, going back to the CP4 is a good pump, in my opinion. But yeah, it has its weaknesses. But again, I want to address, and I want some other people to address also, what takes out the pump. Because using scare tactics by some shops that have their YouTube videos saying, oh, if you don't, this is what's going to happen. I hate these pumps. I hate these pumps. No, 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 no. What took out this pump? That's what you want to go. Every time I've been in this industry, I've been involved with manufacturers in the past, has always asked, this component's going bad. What's taking it out, right? And you try to address that issue. Maybe there needs to be upgrades to the pump itself. You're right. I get it. But what's taking out the pump? And that is low lift pump pressure, air, and yes, the fuel quality or lubricity that's in it too. So therefore, one of the key things that I saw in a bulletin years ago, and I can't even find that bulletin. But one of the key things that we're asking you that we now make it a practice. That's why we've seen the amount of CP4 failures drop. And that is, we know that air is a problem. So therefore, where does a lot of air come in? That is mostly at fuel filter changes. So when you change that primary and that secondary fuel filter on these engines or these applications, do me a favor, go ahead and, there's my mic here. Go ahead and let the truck out. So let me just start. You just did the fuel filters, right? You prime the system, you fire it up. What we're asking you to do is let it idle for 10 to 15 minutes, because a lot of guys will let it run for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe 4, put it in gear, take off. That's where you see a lot of air coming. So therefore, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and let her idle for 10 to 15 minutes after you get done with the fuel filter change. Okay, that has alleviated a lot of those issues. Now, when we're doing diagnosis of the common rail system, one of the things you do, there's a low pressure, there's a high pressure, there's a return. Actually, the 6.7 has 2 returns. But in this case, what we're asking you to do is go ahead and do a lift pump volume test. And the generic number we've been working with is disconnect the line outlet coming out of the pump. We have hoses that we go and we put it to a bottle, whether it be in a water bottle, whatever bottle, some type of measuring, graduate cylinder if you want, is that what you're going to do is you're going to see by cycling the key on that you get at least 1 liter in 30 seconds. Do you have 1 liter in 30 seconds? That's the minimum. You're going to get more than that, but that's the minimum. In other words, are we getting that volume of fuel coming out? And you could repeat it a few times just to make sure you got no restrictions, whether it being at the pickup in the tank or whether it being at the fuel filter itself, and excuse me, at the fuel filter itself that's causing it. So something's causing it. So again, 1 liter in what? 30 seconds of lift pump pressure volume, which is what Cummins taught us years ago. They always pushed volume testing, not just PSI. PSI is pressure. We want to know that you're moving fuel through there. And that, again, needs to be, minimum 1 liter in 30 seconds. That's what we want to look for. So as you look at the LML, yes, I know that the LML Duramax does not have a lift pump, right? Because the L5P, which came out in 2017, had a Denso common rail, had their pump, but again, they actually had a lift pump. But on LMLs from 2011 to 2016, models of GM and GMCs, was the fact that, again, you actually have a suction. So you're sucking the fuel out of the tank. So therefore, what does that mean? That means, again, that we didn't have a good lift pump. That's why on my LML people, I actually push an aftermarket lift pump. There's a lot of good pumps that bolt on, ready to go on an LML. So if you have an LML, it's what I highly recommend to protect that CP4 pump, because when you're working on suction alone, you're sucking it from the tank. Any point where you could lose suction, where you aerate or lose prime, can hurt the pump itself. So therefore, again, to me, the answer is, if I want to protect that CP4 pump, I'm going to go ahead and put a what in it? I'm going to go ahead and put a lip pump in it. That would actually protect it there. So again, even when I'm changing, let me go back here. Even when I'm changing the oil here, excuse me, what am I saying? Changing the fuel filter. In this case, I'm going to let her, once I put that one fuel filter they have on these applications, is I'm going to go ahead and, what am I going to do? I'm going to go ahead and let her idle for 10 to 15 minutes, let it work out the air before I put it in gear. Same thing, right? Same thing. So with that said, you got to know what the cause is. Yes, they sell these kits. It gets very expensive. Then you got to also pull the fuel tank down to get all the metal out that might be in the fuel tank, if there is any. But in this case, you want to get all the crap out, clean the system out, because as a drive-in service shop, that shop is going to have a warranty he has to offer. So he's got to make sure your system is clean and making sure there's no other contaminants such as the fluid, right? So, those of you that know about these, or maybe you've done a retrofit where you took out that CP4, like on an LML, and you put that CP3. Yes, the CP3 is a great pump, but it's an old pump now. And what I mean by that is, that pump wasn't supposed to live no more than, wasn't supposed to see all the time, no more than 26,500, somewhere around there. It wasn't designed for high rail pressure, while the CP4 lives at 28 to 29,000 under heavy loads. So with that said, the CP4 out displaces the CP3, as you can see on the upper right. It says the CP3 has 3 plungers, the CP4 has 2, but the CP4 has 2 cam lobes. So it actually displaces the 2 plungers for 1 revolution twice. So therefore, it strokes 4 times versus 3 of the CP3. So with that said, it actually handles. That's why we're starting to see those LMLs are actually seeing that CP3 that they retrofitted fail. Go that. We predicted that. We knew that was going to happen. We're starting to see some CP3s fail. Ta-da! Anyways, excuse me. So, like I said, instead of trying to scare tactics and tell you that the CP4, oh my God, we need to address what takes out the pump. So what is the weakness? Again, low lift pump pressure. Volume is another issue. And air. You don't want to have a lot of air in there. It'll take it out. Then comes the fuel quality. Like I said at the beginning of this, the fuel quality is a big thing. So therefore, we got to address that. We got to use additives. The bottom line is use fuel additives. Now, if you want to know what fuel additives I like, send me a message and I'll let you know. I don't want to be advertised because I'm not getting paid any money, but I will tell you those that I've used here on the West Coast. Then if you want to start a fight, talk about engine oil, right? Everybody's got an opinion. Hell, we're experts now. We can stick a ball bearing to see how fast it goes down to the bottom of that engine oil. Really? There's more to that, to an engine oil, right? It has to work at many different temperatures. We have to understand what it's going through with it. So with that said, we have to understand that engine oil, like this is my professor from college that used to say this about engines and engine oil. And he was actually a lab tech too as well. Engine oil does not get wore out. It gets overloaded. Okay. So therefore, what makes the oil black? So therefore, one of the things that we seem to have accepted, even from the shop levels, at technician level, we seem to accept that blow-by. No, blow-by is not okay. It's not okay. So therefore, what's the secret to engine life? Because I'll ask technicians when I do my class, I said, hey, if I go buy a brand new truck, what are the odds that that truck is going to be at the dealer for warranty work within a year? And everybody raises their hand, right? Everybody raises their hand. But in this case, I spelled overloaded wrong. Anyways, overload spelled wrong. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that engine oil does not get wore out. It gets overloaded. What makes it black? So in this case, it's again that blow-by gases. So it's not okay to see a lot of blow-by. And if you look at my YouTube channel, because I had people challenge me on this, I actually have a video showing my 6.0 that has over 130, 140,000 miles. And you could see that I change my oil periodically every 3,000 to 4,000. Will you please try to understand that with today's engines that are heavily constipated and heavily congested with emissions, that the secret to make them live longer is to change that oil more frequently? Yes, I get it. The manufacturers are telling you to change that oil every 10 to 15,000. No, every 5,000 at the max. Those trucks that I get that go stop and go, or idle time, every 3,000 to 4,000. And if you're highway, I'll extend it to 4,000 to 5,000. But in this case, it's very important to understand that, again, what takes out that oil, you know. So therefore, lubricity, lubricity. So that's one thing I can see a lot of YouTube channels and other people talking about, that we need to cut in half at least that oil change or interval. In other words, like my professor also used to say, you can never change your oil enough if you want that engine. Because again, what's it cost for a motor? You're talking about 10,000 minimum plus and go all the way up there, right? Depending what you're going to get on it, injectors, turbo, and all that. So therefore, it can exceed $20,000 easily. But in this case, not to mention the labor, guys, the labor sucks on these engines. So, you know, guys that do it day in, day out, they'll say it's easy. But in this case, yeah, it costs money. So our extended engine oil changes wise, no, right? And in this case, no, you don't want to do that top off and change the oil filter, you know, whatever. I don't even want to get into that. I'll do a separate video on that one later. But even when you talk about engine oil, when you look at Ford, because they're the manufacturer, they do their testing. And even when today, they did this a while back, as you can see right there on the bottom above the motorcraft, it says WSS M2C171F1. That is Ford certification. Ford, if you go to their TikTok, Ford TikTok channel, they have a YouTube, by the way. They got a video talking about this where they're saying that they don't approve of CK4 motor oil. They're not saying that certification is good enough. They got their certification, which is a WSS. So even when I order oil from my auto parts store here, you know, the AutoZones and the others, they have engine oil that actually meets that requirement, but they have some that don't. So even Ford, Google, if you don't believe me, Google Ford certified WSS oils, and you're going to go to a website from Ford that tells you which list of oils and weights are approved from Ford that meets that WSS for these Power Stroke 6.7 applications. So they kind of up the ante of where oil should be. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you got to know and do your research and quit thinking you're better than a lab. You know, these guys at least do their testing. They want these engines to actually live longer, but they're under the gun for emissions, and that's why we see those prolonged oil change intervals. So with that said, you know, you can criticize me what you want, but again, it's based on what the manufacturers are saying and what our experience has shown. And again, you know, I work with many different manufacturers and also parts providers and so on. And I would like to think I know what I'm doing. But again, you do whatever you want. I mean, whether you agree or disagree, go ahead and comment. But in this case, all I'm just trying to say is understand what can happen and what could take these components out. What can I do to lengthen the life? And this is what we do. Because again, do we see a lot of CP4 failures? Have we extended the life of people's engines? Yes, we have. So 300,000 is attainable. 400,000, not more, is attainable if you drive it right, you maintain it right, and you use the right fuel additives. As for oil additives, I don't recommend any oil additive, you know, but we do recommend that we run, again, a good fuel additive. Now, I don't want to contradict, again, I'm contradicting. When I talk about that video that I did where I'm using the BG 109, that is a cleaner to actually loosen up that carbon around the rings to reduce blow by. That's not an oil additive. That's just a cleaner. So don't try to think you can nail me on that one. Well, with that said, there you go. I wish you well. I wish you a happy 2025. Until the next video, we will see you again soon. Take care. Now, how do I stop this damn thing? Take care.